Okay, testing, 1, 2. All right. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with a sound test and, see what's going on with YouTube first. I always have a joke about YouTube, it's free, so free services don't always have to work. All right, so I'm seeing everyone saying it's loud and clear, so let me go ahead and close a couple windows here. Wholeness, everyone, and thank you for definitely attending today's call or, live stream. It's been quite an exciting time, to say the least. And one of the main things now is, just really getting on this thing and connecting. Like, after we do so much. Hold on real quick. Let me just fix something because, this stream looks pretty clayish. So let me just do something really briefly, and I'm going to put something on that you could take a look at, just to go ahead and make sure I get a clear copy of the laptop. I need the laptop, just so I can make sure I get a clear copy of what's going on here, because I'm not seeing that this stream is looking great. So 1 second for me. Actually, there it goes. Seems like it's clearing up. Let's see here. Okay. All right, one moment. Let me just go ahead and get my video recorder here plugged in. And that's going to get a really crispy recording of today. I thought that I wouldn't need it. Let me see here. All right. And that cable is right there. Let me not grab on too many things over here. Yep. And there she is. Lost it a little bit. There it is. Okay. All right. If you could just give me a second, everyone. I just wanted to make sure that by the time that we're done, if we have a technical situation, that we have some recording going on. But the stream looks pretty clear, so I guess as long as I let it catch up, it's going to be pretty clear. Let me see here. All right. Okay, cool. So now we have a recording going on. Capture. All right. And here we go. So wholeness and balanced vibration, everyone. And wow, here we are again. It's been quite a bit of time. I really have been working to just get on this, whatever. If I can get on the radio, if I can get on YouTube, whatever I can get on. I've been really looking to keep sharing, and there's just been so much going on, and I've just been going from one thing to another, so it's a little bit difficult to get the time these days, but I'm making the time because it's important. And there's so many people that have been following the message for quite a bit of time, and I always want to make sure that I'm still synchronized with everyone with just what's going on in real time, how things are progressing. Obviously, I've made some massive quantum leaps even since the last stage of the Innerversity. And it's really got me to where, wow, I'm just overflowing with knowledge, but also I'm really getting deep into these experiences and going on these journeys and really seeing what's happening in many of the planes that kind of precede this one. So in one of those journeys, I actually saw this something coming. And that's really one of the reasons why I got on this recording today, was I realized that a lot of us are experiencing a great deal of transition at this point, and the most that we really need is just each other. And since there's so many people that do follow the message and that really count on me to give this kind of information. You know, I want to make sure that I'm present. And then more than anything, I said today, you know, this is either the last of these recordings or the first of a lot of them. So hopefully it's the first of a lot of them, because I would really like to connect with people more on a personal level and on an everyday level, even if it's just to share something for a few minutes. I feel like that connection these days is more important than anything. I actually didn't have much of a script today, meaning I didn't write anything down, I didn't take any notes, because my primary goal was to get here and to connect. And I did get a couple messages from a few people asking if I would just open up some platforms soon to just get some questions answered. So I do want to show you how we're going to accomplish that today. And what we're going to do is, obviously on the Secret Energy site, there is the Q&A section, and this is really what's going to avoid me having to like read a person's question. And obviously if you put it in the chat box, someone else puts it in the chat box, it's going to kind of bump that person down. So what I'm going to have those who have questions to answer, or to get answered, is use Secret Energy's questions. Type out your question, make sure that you get the proper syntax and grammar. You know, there's no rush, so just so I can read it and understand it. And then I'll go ahead and get to that question in the second half of today's conversation. And so you're going to go to secretenergy.com/questions, as you see here. And then all you have to do is, you know, hit ask a question, type your question up properly. And then in about an hour, I would say 45 minutes even, I want to come back to this and then get the information from there. So let me go ahead and look at the stream here, because it lets me at least know that things are still running. And plus, if there's no sound, then I'll know, because people say, hey, there's no sound, or hey, there's no picture. So, you know, where do we begin? You know, there's been so many things that are happening. So, you know, one of my main goals is actually, you know, I know the conversation is going to get into spiritual questions, it's going to get into esoteric knowledge, and, you know, that's just what we do. But more than anything, I really want to show people how this knowledge really connects, or even just ground this knowledge more today into, you know, relationships, all types, you know, business relationships, personal relationships, and, you know, really just showing where there's still a lot of work that can be done. I feel like that, you know, if you want to come up with applications that fit everyone, then you'll start looking in fields that everyone has issues with. Like right now, you know, we've really been heavy on the esoteric knowledge, and this information has really impacted a certain group of people's lives. But let's just face it, you know, you could see the views. You know, if it hits 1,000 people in 2 years, then you know that only 2 people listen to it 500 times. And it's just, you can tell that obviously it doesn't have the reach that we would like it to have, and that's okay, because, you know, it's at times, you know, this path is really about the mission within, right? So the path is your mission. And when you're on your mission, you do eventually reach a phase to where you want to share more with others, but before you can do that, you obviously need to begin to perfect yourself. So what I first want to talk about is that what I say is, when I've been on these journeys and I see something coming, it's like in these fields you can see energy moving around. You can see a lot of things that, you know, can't be seen with the normal eye. And in addition to that, you come to conclusions about a lot of how these fields are set up with a geometry, and what creates space, what creates time, how sound plays into that, you know, and all that. You know, we can start to share that in these future episodes. But the main thing that I was noticing that's happening in this September period right now, and kind of starting mid-August, is the harvest is coming in. So there's kind of 2 things that I noticed about the harvest. You know, the standard new moon and full moon is one thing, but people never also think about that. Well, one, there's more of a galactic new moon, right? And we're on one of those right now. And then there's also the new moon that's happening in your house. Like, obviously, if you have some female in your house and she has a cycle, then her cycle may not line up with the moon cycle. And that generally means that that is actually the cycle in your reality. So that's another way for you to take a look at, you know, where you're at in all of this, just in an energetic field, a personal energetic field in your house. So through these cycles, you know, whether they're the big cogs or the small cogs, we come through these planting and reaping processes where basically everything that was done during one period starts to come back again. And this gives us, a lot of things. It gives us the opportunity to square some things and to get things straight. But it also gives us the maturity of understanding how to deal with situations before they grow into whatever comes out in the harvest. So obviously the reaping and sowing process can be positive and negative depending upon what you're doing. In addition to that, there's this other integer which you really have to pay close attention to, and I just call it galactic breath. As we said a long time ago, planetary breath affects germs. Planetary breath, cosmic breaths affect planetary germs. And what I meant by that is that just like you see the moon moving through, and that stimulates things, or if it's on a waning process, it can pull things, and that's a celestial body. So whatever the flat earthers want to say, it's there, it's doing something, we can prove it. And then there's also the sun, and then there's a bunch of other dots up there which probably are definitely doing something just based on their frequency. And because of that, we find ourselves also subject to the planetary and the cosmic weather. So obviously right now we have an eclipse going on, we have the new moon going on, Saturn has some humongous storm going on it. And so what this actually means in your life is that there's going to be a lot of things happening. There's going to be a lot of resonation to those fields coming around you. And in addition to that, there's going to be a lot of resonations to those fields coming out of you. And then the age-old battle begins of balance, to where you now must arbitrate within yourself, where the first relationship starts. You now must play that third component and get yourself out of the dual field. So we talked about this a long time ago. We drilled into the difference between a binary and trinary field. But most importantly, it's when you're really connected with yourself and you start talking to yourself, there is this battle that starts to go on in your own consciousness, the good one, the bad one, whatever you want to call it. And what's most necessary is obviously this arbitrator, or this other part of you that sees beyond all of that. Some call that the oversoul, sees the beauty of the pain, sees the beauty of the error, and then also sees the power and the wisdom and the power within the expansion. And that way, you're not beating yourself up, and you're also very in tune with what exactly has happened to you in your life. And so that's you. And then you got this cosmic weather, which I would say is also the people around you that you're not necessarily controlling, that can even take your harvest and have you not even reaping what you thought you were going to get. It's kind of like back in the old days, you could plant all the stuff and then all of a sudden find out that, hey, there's a storm that comes through and now all your potatoes are frozen. So what do? And, I was thinking, you probably should plant sprouts because they grow fast. And what I mean by this is that I think a lot of people right now are facing a situation to where it's like the climax, or it feels like a climax of all the stuff they've been working on and all the relationships that they're involved in. Now, first and foremost, I will say, though, the closer you draw to yourself, the more you can feel yourself. If we say this is something like the sun, the closer you draw to the sun, the more you can feel the intensity and the effects of the sun. The further you get away from it, obviously, vice versa happens, the less you feel of it. So you will witness a lot of people that are not in tune with what's happening at all, don't even seem to be even affected by it. And when you mention it to them, it's just in passing because it's not something that they pay attention to. And this is because they are altered in many tenses out of the realness of their reality, right? So the more hyper real that you become, and the more you start to study every single integer in your reality, because you're doing, mind management, body management, soul management, you start realizing all the things that are affecting you. You start looking closer at your food, closer at your relationships, your friends, and closer at your spiritual beliefs. And so this is what allows you to begin to gain awareness. So when you see others running around, I'm just telling you, that don't seem to be affected by eclipses, thunderstorms on Saturn, etc., it's just because they haven't drawn closer to themselves. So in my field, which for whatever reason I'm powering through. I'm always going to stay on the path, right? And because of that, that puts me closer and closer and closer. And now I'm in the total merger. And what that actually equals for me is it equals that I feel these energies more stronger than ever. And I really find myself now really raging against the dying of the light. Working on this path to bring expansion to humanity is one of the most, I won't say is the most, because that's a bit generalizing, but one of the most challenging positions that few know about. So it's really, you're just kind of like, well, I'll say few because we're still few. There's only a few hundred of us on the line right now, so there's billions of people in the world. So what I'm saying is that this is something that is powerful and it's transformative, but it's also equally as tough. And it really requires at all times that, you're really paying attention to what you're doing to others. You're really paying attention to what you're interacting with. And because of that, this puts you in a state to where you can't really even go to sleep. And what I mean by that is that you can't actually even go back into the lower frequencies or where you used to be, even for a moment. You're constantly progressing. So what I want to say first is that, so just remember, so if you're one of those people that you see those cosmic forces beginning to, stack up, and you see your harvest starting to come into question, you're trying to figure out, how much are you going to even be able to sustain from what you have right now, plant some sprouts. And what I mean by that is start making dynamic changes in your life right now that are going to affect things almost immediately or within a few days. And that's how you can stand up against this storm that is coming, or this reaping that is happening. And so that's the first pointer that I want to give. Obviously, again, that we have all these things that are happening with the network, but one thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to recap very briefly on, what was the mission and how we're going to be doing more from henceforth to really restore the mission. Because I feel like that once the platform grew to a certain magnitude, and all of a sudden, we were faced with needing the facilities to, just even facilitate that magnitude. A lot of my power was diverted from, bringing it, like, the blogs, that were like books within themselves, and many of these recordings that last like 3-4 hours, and, all the radio shows. A lot of that time and attention was diverted towards building the infrastructure. And, I really thought that I was going to be able to get into some of this stuff, and within a couple months I was going to be done, like even Secret Energy. But that took an entire year to build it to the capacity that it is now, and we're still in beta. And sometimes, though, I often have to reflect, after a 14-15 hour day of just building, when am I going to get back to bringing it? And also, the longer you kind of stay away from that. Now, true enough, we got the Innerversity, we have all those different things, but you know how I am. I am the overachiever is always trying to, in every tense, facilitate every single outlet. So I've learned the gift in that, and I've also learned the curse in that, in how to manage that kind of state of consciousness, because people who are very brilliant also have a hard time sticking to one thing. They also have a hard time completing something. And that's definitely the zodiac that I'm on. And I think that that's also the aspect that many people are on, that start sparking in their mind this new level of pioneering a whole different reality. And then you start realizing, where do I even start? And so I've started somewhere. I've started in this place of delivering the book and then starting to bring this information. But this is by no means its completion. And what we're rolling into now is how it's going to get, again, more personal. Like, how am I going to assist you with the real matters that you're dealing with? And I'm not saying that the metaphysical knowledge doesn't have applications. I'm just saying that you have to still, at the end of this conversation, walk back into the reality, walk back into the relationships that were waiting on you while you were on this call. And then you have to begin to deal with that in a way that is going to bring you balance, that's going to bring you wholeness. And that's the challenge. that challenge is even greater than believing things that may seem fanciful and may seem untrue, like much of the things that we know now about the pineal glands and its abilities and all that. So it becomes, again, more difficult to deal with just your small reality, just what's happening in your home, versus, you know, calculating the quotient of pi and how that relates to Earth, et cetera, et cetera. So in realizing that personally, I said, you know what? It then shows me why there is still only a small group of people that are listening to this, and it's because we're also talking about problems that some people don't actually have the luxury or even care to address. Again, when you're talking about metaphysical principles and properties, that's for one small crowd. When you start talking about how to have a better life, how to have a better relationship, and how that all connects into your spiritual being, but you make more emphasis on those physical things, like what am I doing from day to day that's getting me by? How can I see the change in that day rather than mentally playing with myself? You know, we've got into this whole mental gym to where we've been able to now eat that energy and sustain ourselves from that energy a bit. But we also need that physical energy that is going to allow us to rebound from one of the biggest levels of awakening that we face in our lives. And let's just admit, any of these awakenings are so riveting, they have an ability to actually tear your entire life down as it was previously. And then you go on, you know, your monkism or, you know, your alienism, because, you know, no one knows what you're talking about anymore. No one's actually on your frequency anymore. You've made this shift. But then once you ground it, if you ever ground, now you have to re-implement yourself back into the reality. And also to build your vision, you need to now figure out what your career is going to be. And then you have this moral challenge and in this spiritual consciousness to satisfy. And then that makes it an odd job. That makes it to where every time you go somewhere to do something that may sustain you, there's always this thing that you find that you just can't do or you just don't believe in. And because I've had to deal with that same thing myself, I feel like that my capacity is really there. My capacity is really masters for masters, showing the step-by-step process, as we were doing in the beginning, of how I'm getting by from day to day and how I'm keeping a connection with the physical reality and what's going on in the real world, and how I'm merging that with my hypersentience that is continuously being gained. Now, obviously, a lot of people are still yet to get the memo, even within our own group, even people in the chat box. I can only encourage you to go on your journeys. Like, talking is going to only do so much. You have your experiences, those help a lot more. And then we have all these elements here that are also here to assist us in making that process. So a lot of us also deal with fear. And it's fear that generally stops our path or generally stops our process on the journey. So a big part of what we're doing next is more of a step-by-step on how to deal with fear, how to overcome fears, how to spot fears that may not be so obvious. So that way, when you're riding high on these mega frequencies, that instead of taking so much input and, you know, you're feeling the medicines or you're feeling whatever is interacting on you and you're just in the feeling, you can now start to output, which is totally different. That's actually when you begin to apply your power. That's when you begin to say, okay, this is what I came here to do. Because we're used to operating on this frequency right here, which is nothing like, you know, when this stuff turns on. It can be a little bit disorientating. In fact, you can spend most of that time when you're in a high frequency just trying to adjust to the frequency. But as you go over and over and over and over and over again, eventually you start becoming more familiar with that space. And so we're going to go through that step-by-step process of, so what should you, after you become familiar with the space, be actually doing in the space? So another thing that I wanted to really assist people with, just from a mentor level, because, you know, we all have mentors, we all need mentors. This whole idea that we can do it alone or we're doing it by ourselves makes no sense. As I put on my Instagram today, that is a product of a reality that is not used to accepting responsibility and also is not used to acknowledging how many different things, if you may, beings, life forms, we even can say bees, right? Because bees, if you eat honey or if you eat anything that comes from a plant, they spend a lot of time pollinating. Now, true, they have their own thing going on, but that assists you. So that means that bee is helping you. And that's just one thing. So then you got the breath. Then you got all these bacteria and microorganisms. So you have so much that's actually assisting you at any point where you're thinking you're doing it alone. And if that kind of consciousness starts setting in, it's not only a lie creeping in, it's also the type of consciousness that it seeks to isolate you from every single thing else. Because again, it's not true. And then what happens is you also are beginning to decrease your power. So a lot of people feel like they become more powerful when they feel like that they're doing it on their own. And that's actually not what happens. You become more powerful when you're aware of how many things are actually assisting you. You start to realize the power and the effects and the formula of the things that are assisting you. And then you even begin to alter or change the state of the things that are assisting you to cause different effects in the reality. So that last stage is what they would call magic. So in every tense, the more you're aware of all the things that are helping you anyway, like breath, like water, then you can start to assimilate more friends, more positivity, more harmonics, more truth. But the more you keep getting into this closet as if it's just you out there and there's nobody like you and you're the only one, this is the kind of consciousness that actually sets in to begin to isolate us. And in that isolation, then it can attack. And a big part of this connection that we've been sharing for years, which, that's why I'm looking to increase this connection more, is primarily for the reason of making sure that we have others to actually connect with on this path. So that way we're not feeling so lonely. We're not feeling so alienated in this world. Because the more people that you have that same frequency or similar frequency as where you're going, the more better that you feel about even going in the day. And I find that even myself, I have to even snap back into having friends. You do so much on this internet, physical friends, you do so much on this internet. And, you do so much in your astral plane and your journeys and your dreams, but there's still physical people here. And when you go on those journeys with those people, or you make those connections and you sit down and you take time, because see, that's what the awakening sometimes alters, is our ability to do that and even remember that we need that. And the biggest example of this to me is I know that in a crazy person's mind, they're totally sane. So in many people's minds, they don't see these flaws. And it takes someone who they respect, someone that they may honor, or someone that they have maybe as a mentor to say at times, hey, I'm experiencing that same thing, or I've dealt with that same thing. I'm not beyond reproach. I got one of these 5 base bodies just like you. So the maintenance in it, the inclinations that occur, and all the different things that it was already hardwired with before I jumped in, does actually affect me. And what I do is, instead of attempting to suppress, I attempt to really explore those thoughts, really explore those ways of being, those reflections and those actions, to also know what happened in the past and how is it affecting me. What happened as a child and how is that affecting me now in my present? How is that affecting how I'm looking even at everything around me? Am I into spirituality because something else has occurred? Is there a cause and effect to what I'm doing? And the reason why I analyze these kind of things is to be more true. Because once you can answer those questions for yourself, you can start being more true. Because one thing that I discovered also is, generally, because we do have these two poles, whatever a person really says that they're generally about exactly opposite. But the good thing is, at least they know what they want to do and they know what they want to become. And that's a big part of it. And what I mean by that is, I can only use myself as an example, that I can say pound for pound after thousands and thousands of books that I don't believe personally that there's that many more people that understand as much about the mechanics to spirituality, like different planetary systems, the geometry that's associated with the different connections in the words, the words leading all the way back to certain times, references to aliens, angels, references to dominion, all those different scopes that I've covered for 7 years now. I just think pound for pound, if I got into the paint with someone and just balancing out that knowledge, it would be very difficult because I've studied that long. So you could say maybe that I'm a savant in spirituality, or maybe even smart. The reality is, though, is that there's some simple things at times, like, just how to deal with, personal things, how to deal with relationships, how to deal with business propositions, those kind of things. Where is my career going? That I may be completely clueless about at times because I have not devoted as much attention to that as I've done everything else. So what happens for also gifted people is they need to understand that if you have 5 things going on, or let's say 4 things for easy numbers, still you can generally do either 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%, or 50, 25, 10, 15. You have everything that you're doing is still pulling a certain amount of your energy, so you cannot do each of those 100% unless you take individual time to finish something and then move on to the next thing. And because of that phenomena, at times we can find ourselves pushing a lot of strength into one aspect of who we are, one aspect of where we're getting a lot of response from. Because, if you have conscious Facebook friends, this kind of forces you every day, if you may, to go into some kind of conscious conversation, right? And, to take in some more conscious news, about, whatever. And that can make up so much of your day that you can forget that you also have this physical being. And then also, pretty much everyone has someone in their reality. How much time is that person getting of you? We talked about a long time ago how I started noticing that spirituality not only being addictive, but also was somewhat dominating life. It's like you start just doing spirituality, and then people are looking for you. They're looking for that connection with you. They're trying to figure out where you are. And, it's like you're missing from that. And again, we're not saying any of this is wrong, because that's okay. It depends on what stage that you're actually in. But by now, you should see the need for you to begin to figure out how you're reintegrating into the reality and creating something amazing, because we're raging against the dying of the light. The more people go into seclusion and get themselves, what they say is spiritually together, and remain there, the less people that we actually have in the arena of the world still encouraging the masses, even from an energetic level, to make that change. And nowadays, it's very sensitive because the minds are stronger. Like when you go on the journeys, you can feel the minds. You can feel the overarchs or the oversouls. And those are just basically the collective hive of the people. And when something comes across like, the racism thing has like been, the racism thing has always been alive. But it's alive more than ever these days. I mean, everywhere you go, there's just now that strict let's divide going on. Let's divide our races. Now, black people, you must go over here. White people, you must go over here. We'll talk about Chinese later. Vegans, you must be over here. Meat eaters, you must be over here. We'll talk about, vegetarians later, or raw vegans later. It's all of the division, and somehow this has now come across as being different than the original division, which was, God and the devil and, good versus bad and all these things. So the thing is, where is it really getting us? And if you want to answer that question, we just take a look at the world. We see where the division is getting them. It's got them all confused. People can spend most of their time every single day just sifting through knowledge and information or posts and things from people who are just polarized. We get that then. I get it. But how do we bring it together? And that's what this is morphing into, because how you bring things together is by creating relationship. See, one of the things that I noticed just recently, I went on this river rafting trip, right? Which was quite interesting. And it was actually my third time, but it's always interesting every time I go. But this time, the funny part is the tour guides are Costa Ricans. So, and they just probably doing tours every single day. So they don't really see what's going on in the world much as far as news is concerned. Costa Rica is really like that. It's like the whole half of the world could be missing and you can find out like 6 or 7 days later, because obviously in paradise, who really cares? So what happened is that one of the tour guides, because there was like 6 or 7 kayaks, he was pairing people up. And he had taken these 3 French girls and put them with these 3 Saudi Arabian guys, only from the inclination that, okay, 3 girls, 3 guys, they're both young, put them in the same kayak together, they'll have a great time. Not realizing that, obviously, we just had this whole situation with the French terrorist attack. All these people are really abiding by the program. So, they're getting in the boat together, and you can see the looks on mainly the girls' face like, are they going to blow up the boat? And, so I was paying attention to how all this was going on, and it's kind of a little bit comical for me. But I noticed about 25% of the way in, because this journey generally takes teamwork when you're doing the whitewater rafting. There's dangers. You can really hurt yourself out there if your teamwork ain't straight. You have success, like when you come through a complete, rapid and then nothing happened crazy, you made it through. And you have celebration, after you're done, everyone is, celebrating. And with those 4 components, about 25% down the river, these French girls and these Arab guys were the best of friends and companions. And by the end of the trip, not even on a sexual level, they just wanted to stay connected. So I feel like the whole world needs to go on a whitewater trip and see the success, see the benefits of the teamwork, see all the different power within that. And I started realizing how society plays with us with things that are supposed to be like that, but are really not, like sports. In sports, you got different races on the team, in most cases. And, you have this connection, but there's always an opponent. And because the opponent is put into the mix, it doesn't allow each team to actually transcend the conflict, right? So now we're looking for something, and this is where you can start sending your projections. We're looking for something to where the world works together, but not against something, because that's what's actually happening in a lot of these groups. It's like all these people have gotten together to be against another race or against another form of concept. And when we do that, we invite the same energy. And one thing that I noticed also is that when you get in a conflict with someone, if you're not really good at talking to people, if you always use negative reinforcement, the moment that you say something negative to them, it triggers them right into the whole aspect of the last quarrel they were in and all the collective quarrels with that. So I'm going to explain that in a very easy way. So if someone tells you, and this is just a question to you, especially if you know a lot about health and nutrition and the way to eat, etc. Someone tells you, man, I got this stomach ache, man, it just hurts. The first thing that you're supposed to say is that's good. And then you can say after that something like that's good, because your system is actually still warning you about things that you may not be eating properly. See, so what happens is the moment that you say that's good, and this is why people can start from scratch at times and just go take some behavioral courses or language courses and go take verbal courses and how your body and your gestures. If you want more success in whatever you're doing, even explaining the message, if that's your mission, then you need to understand how to talk to people. Because just because you're coming with this information doesn't mean that it's going to be adaptable for the person if you don't put it in the proper format. And if you don't believe it's your responsibility to put it in the proper format, then why are you doing it anyway? You're just wasting your time. So if I tell this person good, they're immediately into that. I mean, it totally disarms them. It's actually a very unique way of using words in your favor. And then you can then insert what the person needs to do next. But if you go, they say, hey, you know, my stomach is really hurting. Well, that's because you keep eating that garbage food. I told you that garbage food is no good for you. That's why I don't eat that stuff. Then the person's probably going to say back to you, but I don't eat this all the time. In fact, so they're going to go on defense is what I'm saying. And then once you have a person on defense, you've already lost them. They're not on your team anymore. See, what we have to learn as teachers is a technique to where you're always on the same side as the person, because that's what you set out to do. You're trying to teach them. But if you become their opponent, then you've lost a bulk of the reason why you've actually engaged with them in the first place. And whether any person on the planet knows it or not, they've also lost the opportunity that the planet has given us all to assist one another. If we need help, you must give help. If you're looking for a book, go to a library. If you want to get beets, you plant beet seeds. And so you first have to be in the mode of realizing that you do need some massive change going on here. When I start seeing some of the mechanics that are actually controlling this reality, I said, man, you know, as much assistance as I can get in this massive awakening, I'll take it. And with making that commitment, I equally say, and also I'm willing to do as much as I can to assist what I can assist. And then that gets me into the cycle of assistance. That allows me to receive it and still keeps me in there so that I can actually give it. So that's what this is about. This is about insights on daily life. And the other thing is that now, as you've seen, I'm pretty sure you've seen some banners on Secret Energy that we're going to be rolling out the Keymaker again on September 22nd. There's going to be the pre-show on September 22nd. And that's probably going to be a show that actually takes place every Sunday, because that is more of the day that everyone has some time available. But there's going to be two shows. There's going to be the Keymakers, and there's going to be the Keymaker. And the reason why I wanted to do that is, of course, you know, I still got to get, you know, there's like large or long notepads over here of knowledge that's been come into after the Innerversity and how stuff starts clicking. So I definitely have to feed that, because, you know, that's what we do. That's how we are, and that's our pastime, that's our pleasure, that's what we do. So there's that. But I felt more of a need for people to connect with others that have also discovered major keys in this reality. And I'm not talking about just getting somebody like, I don't know, Rince or whoever, Ike or whoever, just on the line, just, you know, the same circuit. I'm talking about the people who are not getting any airplay. Like, you know, even me after 6-7 years, this is still underground. People know about me, but on the circuit, it's like taboo to mention my name. It's like I'm just too volatile for them. I'm not in the comfort zone most of the time of things to discuss, right? So this is one of the main things is bringing some amazing people that I've met on this path that do things a bit more proficient than me in many areas. Like, I know a lot about nutrition, but I'm no doctor. I mean, I know a lot about many different things, but that may not be my profession. I generally stay in the spiritual field because I have a natural gift for that. But there are other things that we need to know, as I talked about before, about life, right? Besides spirituality. How do you feed your children? How do you entertain your children? You know, when you need personal consultations in your relationship, that's where I'm really moving into now, is working with relationships. And again, when I say relationships, some people immediately think about their lover, never realizing that everything that they engage in life is some type of relationship. So once you figure out the formula for that, oh my goodness. As I said again on one of my recent posts, I said that once you learn how to maintain the relationships that you're in, you can go anywhere, because people are actually responsible for getting you where you need to go. That's what's called networking, communicating, etc. So in many aspects, you find other people are really necessary for you to get to where you need to go. But if you don't know how to develop relationships with people, where do you go? Nowhere too fast. So these are the things, because also after coming off of massive experiences, it may be difficult for you to actually bond with people again. You may not see the reason in it anymore. It's like, why go out there and get drained? That's generally the number one thing that comes on our mind. But there's even other people that actually won't drain us, and we won't even contact and communicate with them because we've gotten used to being more in hermit mode and isolated. But the truth is that from deep research, and I guess the key word here is altruism, but in deep research, what we find is that when you're really dedicated to actually assisting people that need your assistance, not the ones who you've been telling since day one, they don't want to do anything about what you're talking about, not that person, but I'm talking about the person that at least expresses the will to change. When you start stepping into their lives and start bringing this truth and bringing this practical side of truth, see, what I've armed you with thus far is knowledge to sit into any sanctum and really wow the hell out of whoever, I don't care how long they've been initiated. But what I want to equip you with now is the ability to walk in anywhere and to begin to develop something dynamic. What you have is something that can always be built towards, meaning you can always steer a conversation, sometimes after years, sometimes after months, sometimes after minutes, into the direction of higher levels and states of consciousness. The first thing you have to learn, though, is how to build a bridge to that, to not go into that immediately, even with people who are on that level, who say they're on that level. We bump right into them, and the next thing you know, you go into esoteric knowledge. You don't ask, how are you doing today? What's happening in your life? So these are the things these are protocols that, it doesn't have to be all robotic, but you can't forget, because those are the bricks of what you're building as your foundation. And here's what happens. Here's what a lot of people are experiencing in September, including me. I experienced things, I still have experience. Is that anything that is in your past that did not get settled, when the harvest comes around, it'll be there in front of your face again. But this time it'll have grown a bit, just like any other seed. And what often happens is we find it not only somewhat difficult to deal with because it's grown up, but we also find it difficult to move on to the next stage without actually settling it. Because what happens if you put something heavy, which is always your next stage, right? It's massive, on top of your previous stage and the foundation is not settled? So this is like somebody's asking you to do something in life. And this could be anything. Somebody could be asking you to start a business with them. Somebody could be asking you to, just to engage with them on some type of level. If you have a lot of unsettled things, you have to have the respect for that person to say, you know what? I got some things that I need to take care of before I can even entertain that in my personal life. You can't just keep jumping to the next thing and jumping to the next person and jumping and jumping and jumping, because then what you end up with is all these energetic forms behind you that every time you go into a new relationship, you bring them into the new relationship, like business relationship, personal relationship, etc. So again, it sounds so simple, but it's often omitted. And because of that, many do not have as much success as they can have. Not saying they don't have any success, but as much success as they can have on this path. Because this path is so dynamic, it can take you into other spaces with anything that you can even think of in English. You're even challenged to learn a new language. Frontal lobe communication and words you've never even understood you can pronounce. See, the thing is that if you can hear it, you can pronounce it. Like, you ever heard some like weird frequency or weird noise? They may have it on a radio or whatever. You can hear that. So when you understand how magnificent the being is, as you've seen with some of these sound people that, make weird noises with their mouth, etc., you can also make that sound. You can mimic that sound. You can mimic that frequency. So what is the true extent of what you can mimic? And just like in Dune, it talks about that there are words that are so powerful they can heal or they can kill. And because those words are frequencies. Like, I advise everyone now with your new state of consciousness to go take a look at Dune, because it's telling you everything right there. It's talking to you about even your chakra activation substance, whatever it may be, including breathing, known as the spice, that allows you to move through space and time and fold space and time, but without moving. It's like you're doing all this in your bed. You have this activated, every single night when you go through your dream, you're moving through space and time, you're looking through others' eyes, and you're realizing what's going on in different realities. They're all merging together, so you're having a hard time realizing how this could even be real. But then at the same time, what is real anyway beside what you're perceiving? So all these different things can be enjoyed by one who is first begin to enjoy themselves and then others. Because if you're not enjoyable to be around, then you can't count on those vibrations and those energies actually becoming a part of what's around you. So once again, what I'm saying is that we have a personal frequency, and we have to watch as in the mirrors of the people that are around us. We have to look in the mirrors of the people around us and really pay attention to how they're experiencing us. Don't all the time think that, hey, it doesn't even matter. It does matter, because it's actually the mirror that the universe and the cosmos has given you. And it's way more dynamic than the one you can see in the bathroom, because that's just you. When you go into the mirror in the bathroom, you just see you. How dynamic is that? When you look at someone, you now see another variation of yourself, and that is much more dynamic. So all of that can be benefited from for the one who's watching. So just remember, we got the key maker, and we got the key makers coming. And then a lot of what I'm talking to you today about, I'm just grazing over things, because we're going to get into details. We're going to get into step-by-step processes. We're going to talk about things that are infallible, that every time you use them, like I said, when someone tells you the bad thing, you can always say good. You would think that sometimes it wouldn't fit, but every time you'll find that the moment you say good, you can follow it up immediately with something else behind that makes it all fit, and it just keeps the energy in your direction. So the main thing also, I should have said this in the beginning, because some people have already feverishly typed their questions, is I really would like, they can be esoteric related, but I really would like questions that are from the depths, in a sense that if you really needed to know something, and your life may be even dependent on it. And I'm not going to hold you to this, because you're like, well, I just wanted to ask about water. Well, your life does depend on your water, but you know what I mean. If you just happen to be in a position to where you needed to ask real questions about what was going on in your life specifically, now I'm not going to interpret any dreams, what would that question be? Because see, there's questions that you may propose to people all the time, and those are just actually the questions that you already have the answers to. And you just really want someone to say the answer so you can just add more onto it, right? But then there's these other questions, deep and heartfelt. Like I said, you take off the mask. See, we're going to take a minute here and just going to breathe. I'm going to go drink some magnesium, because I'm on a liver cleanse, which we're going to be starting to do these cleanses. And we're going to do all these cleanses together, because it's very motivating, like virtual cleanse, when we do these cleanses together. And not to go on a tangent here, but liver cleanse is pretty much the easiest cleanse to do with the most effect. So, you really want to get into that, because the liver does control a lot of things that go on in your body, and it really regulates things. So what I want you to do is I want you to dig deep. I want you to take the moment that we're going to have the break for, and think about being real and being real with yourself. Understanding you have a friend here, like you have a friend, you have a mentor, you have someone that I really do care. I may be sitting here virtually, but I would not be doing this if I didn't care. This is sometimes dangerous, sometimes boring. You're not the one that everyone likes, and you're also not the one that everyone hates. It's a very strange thing to do this, especially for this long. But to do that, it takes some kind of passion. It takes some kind of connection. And that passion and connection is 100% with you. Because I'm really the type of person also that I just can't do this kind of thing for so long if there's not at least one dedicated person. And because there's about, I don't know, 1,000, thousands of dedicated people, it's going to keep me going anyway. But the most important thing that I'm starting to do personally with myself is step out of the hypersentient zone and come back into the reality. I have all that with me, but you don't have to know that. And I just need to be available for you in what you're experiencing right now. See, because Have you ever noticed, you may see people how they act around, let's say, stars and actors. They can't even articulate the question they really want to ask. They're more focused on maybe something about, they may ask the person, what's your stats? And, how did it feel to play Reservoir Dogs? And all about things that are kind of abstract to maybe some of the questions you should really be asking, such as, what were the major keys in your life that allowed you to transcend into the level that you really got to right now? Was there things that you noticed going on that were kind of fishy? Are there societies that you're working with? You may not ask that question at all because you don't want to piss that person off, right? So, but if you got the answer, you would actually know more than if you just addressed things to the person that, you knew you could find the answer out by yourself. So that's what I'm really saying is dig deep for your question. See how you want to connect with this. We have one more hour in today's show. It's at 8 o'clock. And yeah, just think about your selflessness and how that connects with things. So let's just take a brief break. Let me get this going on. We're going to go ahead and switch to this screen here. I'm going to go ahead and hit the refresh button. I'm going to get something to drink really quick. And let me see here. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and do it. So let me see here. So let me go ahead and put up some virtual cleanse. Excuse me, not virtual cleanse. I guess virtual cleanse is on my mind. Let me see here. How many windows are open here? I think there we are. All right. So there we are. And I'm going to hit the refresh button on this. And then I'm going to go ahead and play some of this. There's no sound, but there's some visuals. And then we're going to come forward. All right, there we go. All right, everyone, I'll see you in just a second. Oh, wow, looks like there's some really good questions here already. This is great. Okay, so yeah, we're going to come back and we're going to go ahead and get into these questions. All right, everyone, I'll see you in just a second. Oh, wow, looks like there's some really good questions here already. This is great. Okay, so yeah, we're going to come back and we're going to go ahead and get into these questions. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. So if everyone could get back to their, well, actually, you don't have to do anything. You just have to listen. So let me go ahead and just get my screen together here. Go ahead and cut this off. Hopefully you enjoyed your little sound set and your break that I put together. I may become a DJ after this. So I'm just going to go ahead and move through these questions. I'm also, like a radio show, I'm just going to let the visuals roll. And I'm just going to answer these questions, and I'm going to get into the flow of it. Just a bit bigger. So the first question that I see here is, there was actually a question about marriage, and that was there before we started. So I'm going to actually handle that question last, since, we'll cover the full gambit of things, and that'll make that question kind of answer itself, because it is probably one of the most complex. So this just says, for Sevan Livestream YouTube questions. So just remember, you just put your question in that area, which is the topic area, and then I'll get to it. Okay, this looks like a lot. So let me just read through this really briefly. Okay, so let me just read this out loud, because that way, this is a book basically over here. And so the person says that they've been watching a lot of YouTube videos and researching a lot. And also the good thing about this is that, and before we even start, is that everyone has access to this page. So if you find that you have some insight on what a person is asking, that's how we become more dynamic for each other. That's how it's not always about, what's Sevan's opinion on this, or, what does he say about it, even though that can be all encompassing at times. There's definitely people who've gone through different experiences, and that puts them into a different perspective of being able to answer these questions. So I definitely welcome anyone who's listening to the conversation today. You don't got to answer all the questions in the whole questions area, but if you feel like you can address any of these questions and you have some expertise in this or experience in this area, please do so. So I'm going to read through this, and the person says, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos and researching a lot, but I can't find anything. So I thought I'd ask on secret energy. I guess they can't find anything about this topic, so they were asking in secret energy, and they were wondering if we could answer a question about the matrix that we're living in. The person says, I have a really interesting story about how I became awakening into all this new knowledge and being spread on the internet about this spiritual war we are dealing with, that they share with me, and I replied to their emails about their astral projection. They wonder if I remember them, and they wanted to know how to deal with the archons once awakened. I'm noticing that the more I wake up to newer knowledge, the more they keep attacking me and harassing me. Okay, so I'm going to start off with that part of the question, because this is actually one of the people that were inspired this conversation today, whether they're aware of it or not. I'm not big enough yet to where I can't see all of the messages coming through. So mainly on, some of these social networks. And, what was proposed in the question in a rather strange way is when I was going to open up some kind of platform to where questions could be answered. So here we are, we're at that platform to where questions could be answered. I also got another email from my brother. I believe his name was Randy. I think he said he was with Infundishi. And they were wondering if I was going to do any kind of conversation on this eclipse new moon thing. And since I have been just planning to get on September 22nd, but still telling myself every day I need to get on, I decided, okay, today is going to be the day I want to do it, even if it's one day's notice, which, I love to try to give a little bit of notice out. So anyway, what's being asked about the archons. So let me first address the archons, because, this is, we're going to go over this several times in our lives. And it's because, not only is it just a part of popular occult knowledge, but it also is something very real that people begin to deal with personally, and then they just give it the title archon because it seems to fit the bill as far as being somewhat of nefarious, somewhat of a malevolent side. The interesting thing is when we start to research the dynamics of the human being and the spirit that's within us, we actually discover that its origins is not from this particular point in time. This is a point in time that we're experiencing now in human bodies, which are a certain type of geometry and can offer a certain type of expression, but this is not our first time. This is not our first rodeo. And in fact, our first rodeo had to do in another body, which we can call the diamond body or the daemon body. And this particular body is very resilient. It does not actually die. So although it can, well, nothing dies, but what I mean is that it could get pretty pelted and damaged and weathered by time and still be in existence. In fact, that seems to only polish it further. That doesn't mean that in appearance that it looks beautiful. A lot of times that people could see this as a monster. And so this is why you find this kind of parody in the reality about, beautiful monsters, or the energy of a monster being its real beauty, while its beast is, of course, its appearance and, in its expression. And we're actually in a reality now that they harness beasts, meaning that you see it. It's like, going on safari, and they go out on safari and they hunt the most dangerous animal, right? And that's because they want the challenge of actually overcoming something that is a formidable opponent and actually showing it that its strength is not always superior to intelligence. And that's the most important thing to remember about where we're still at in the aspect of our intelligent mind being able to tame this beast within. So you don't go nuts out there snatching purses, getting girls the way you want them, and all these different things because, and stealing at the job, and hitting somebody in the face because they said crazy stuff to you, because you begin to restrain that part of yourself, that wild side of yourself, sometimes imbalanced side of yourself, with this knowledge and wisdom. And then it shows you truly that the pen or knowledge and intelligence is more powerful than the sword or brute force, because that's your ability to begin to subdue yourself with your own consciousness and begin to reason. But that doesn't make that energy go anywhere. It actually is always present and can either be learning and being trained by one's actions, or quite fed up with one's actions because there's not enough expression. Because a lot of these primordial forms that we would call archons are actually aspects of our expressions. And because our expressions have two sides, it's like the diametrics I was telling you about today. I may be extremely intelligent and then simple stuff I miss. That's the kind of thing that goes on within the spiritual being. So the more actually that you magnify this perfected side of yourself, as you may claim it to be first because it's got this title on it that says good, the more you actually diametrically increase the strength and the power of the diametric force that is accompanied to that. And that's actually the only way that you can be in this reality. That's called a standing wave. In the event that one of those forces come out of balance, you start to appear less and less in the reality. And what I mean by that is that you start becoming more abstract. We can physically see your body, but if we're talking to you, we can tell that you're not here, you're not present. You're either in the future or you're in the past, anywhere but the now. And so this is what happens when the imbalances begin to occur between what a person calls their light side and what a person calls their dark side. And then with anything that wants expression, just like kids, they want attention. When you don't pay attention to those urges and those primordial forces and find how to transmute them, then they actually become what hinders your path. They become the hinderers, the accusers. Those are still the dark energies that are in the mind, the dark frequencies that can start to pervade the situation when you find yourself getting into high vibrations. So there's the identity of the archon. So let's read on here. The person asks, more and more wake up new. Okay, so those are some good tips about that. We've identified that. We're going to talk about how to deal with it in a minute. But, well, okay, we're going to get into Lemuria. I'm still reading through this. This is pretty long. So let me just keep reading and see if all this connects at some point, because I still do have to talk about tips on dealing with that. So it says, so in the last 3 years, I started to research more about spirituality, and it led me down the path of the reptilians and the archons and all this new information about the Lemurians and Kundalini and dark matter, energy and synchronicity, etc. Now, I'll stop there for one moment to just remind everyone how much they're entertained by this stuff. Because if you love science fiction, if you ever like video games, if you ever like a good plot, you ever liked a good twist, if you ever like something, some suspense, some action, some even prefer a little bit of horror, this does it. And it not only does it from external aspects, if you're watching something, you actually get a chance to participate in this. Because it's very real. I mean, it's not something that we're just making up. So when we start down this path of the reptilians and the archons and all these kind of entities, there is an extreme attraction to this kind of lure. So, we must first remember that there's something about this that beckons us internally to discover more about it. So he goes on, he says, and one day I started to experience psychic attacks through humans. That's when it finally registered that we are living in an illusion ruled by demons and archons. So I decided to help spread the message and play my role by using my Instagram account to spread knowledge as much as I could about the universe and this spiritual war. And the more I was spreading truth, the more the archons would attack me. So once again, we find that just thinking about the psychic attacks that are coming through humans, and what we will actually start to realize more than ever is when you begin to wake up more, then you're more aware of the psychic attacks that actually go on all the time, even before you're awake. And the easiest way to put this is that some people, they expect me to throw some lightning from my hands, just like a Sith Lord, and just burn out the next person just to prove that I have some kind of spiritual power. But the interesting thing is how the dimension works is that you cannot actually see personally the power that I'm carrying unless you happen to get on the frequency that power is on. Meaning when a person raises their frequency and then looks at a person, they can see the energetic field around them. They can see some shape-shifting going on. They can see a lot of different things because they've gotten into the frequency of being able to see. And they say, we got one that can see. So when a person's in that high frequency, that's what they can see. They can see the energy coming off of you, so they know what you're all about. But in the dense frequency, this is almost like, someone who's never been on the ayahuasca journey, someone who's never been on the diamond tree journey. And then they're sitting here talking to you in physical reality about how no other dimensions and realms exist because they've never seen them. So what happens in these kind of scenarios is that it's almost like you hit a wall because the person needs to get on that frequency before they can realize that. So the first thing is to understand that there's always what is called a quote-unquote psychic attack coming off of humans from one point to another, even people that you care about the most, because the mind is constantly oscillating between positive and negative, which comes out as positive and negative thoughts about different interactions that they've had with you. So you become more aware. Now the interesting thing is that now this war between these archons and these demons, when we go to work that is spiritual work, esoteric work that is older than those words, which are actually primarily Greek words, you find that there was never really a demon that wasn't actually inside of the person, that there wasn't really too much emphasis on the external forces because they were projections of things coming from inside. Now, I'm not saying that there's not other life forms running around here that are out of the vibratory spectrum of people's eyes that are quite malevolent. What I'm saying is that to have resonation, for them to actually be be in your frequency field, there has to be some kind of resonator. And the resonator serves the function of you being able to alter whatever it is that that frequency is emitting. So what I'm saying to you is you have the power to actually control archons. And as you dig deeper and deeper into some of this knowledge, what the last system that just came out, they actually taught how to call the archons and how to try to glean knowledge from them. The next system that is here now teaches how to transmute archonic energy. So how this works is that, and of course that the previous system is AA, which is the Ordo Templi Orientis, which is OTO, the Golden Dawn. That's what their teachings were about. That's as far as they could get with the archons. They also did recognize from Jung and Freud's work that the archons were a part and a subset of our primordial consciousness. That deep in the dream, that's where you find that they reside, deep in the subconscious part of a person's mind. So when you hypnotize a person, they can have godlike power, lifting things and throwing and flipping cars, because they are tapped into their primordial energy. But this primordial energy, as being before a lot of these geometric knowledge systems now, like the phi-based system, geometry is knowledge. So they preceded all of that. So they don't actually have necessarily the ability of utilization of that power to its maximum potential. Hence our arrival. So this becomes something that it is a depth conversation, but what adepts do is they don't actually look at the archons as a challenge. They actually look at a challenge from the level of a battle. What actually is taking place in the adept's mind with the archons is the transmutation of that adept's psyche in order to allow the most vicious force to bend to the will of that person. And like I said, the previous system went into sorcery with it because they could not withstand. There wasn't enough knowledge about, where this really was coming from, how it really connected. So you had a lot of people just going on power tangents. But now, because of the research and a lot of work that has been done, and this is, just from me to you, we're now as human beings getting to the point of realizing why it is that we are so, what can I put it, challenged in this reality. And one of those main reasons is because you're in this body. See, this body, it's got a pineal gland, it's got teeth, which are piezoelectric, it has a brain, it has a heart, and all of these things are so powerful that in the event that someone recognizes their power, as many people have done in this world, it puts them as a real threat and a real danger to the structure of the world, for better or for worse. So in that sense, it's not a game. There's a real potential to what we can do. So what's most important, I find, for us individually is that we think about the responsibility and whether we're able to handle it, not if it's real. See, we still have people that are wondering if it's real, and the only reason why they haven't actually experienced it is because we wouldn't see them anymore if they did. They would lose it. The energy is so strong, it's vivid. So it has the ability to actually take one's consciousness and warp it if that consciousness and that will is not strong enough. So that's why they talk about heavily in these systems the will and how powerful your will actually is, and that being the main controlling factor. So being attacked by archons is actually a product of relinquishing power from yourself to archons. And now this is not something that everyone has not participated in that studies the occult one way or another, especially in the first parts of understanding who these entities are, because they're taken first as opponents. Now remember what I talked about in relationships. Now if someone's already your enemy, now they're on defense, and now you're going to battle. versus as a mover, as a traveler, as an observer, you're just gleaming. So realistically, you can't really be phased into. I don't want to make this complex. That wasn't the goal of today's conversation, but your resonance to how you've transmuted that energy, it has to bow down to. So when you see this malevolent archon, it has to submit to its perfected higher self. And because you're carrying through your organs and through the spectrum of your aura, you're carrying that signature. It's now your responsibility to transmute it. And you're going to see what I'm talking about here in a moment, because I saw a question that's going to tie into this. And we're going to talk about this transmutation, but we're going to keep going. So they went on and said, now, so that's why I asked you for any tips in dealing with these archons, because I've subscribed to many people like the YouTube Spreading Beautiful Knowledge to the World, people like Makalisi and me and Sirius King and 13 Sign Astrology, etc. But I can't find any videos talking about dealing with the archons. Once awakened, I can perceive them and I can feel their presence every day. And how do I get them to simply leave me alone? And again, that's the answers to your questions. And obviously, we cover the archons in great depth in the Innerversity, especially semester 2, when we start talking about the arc or the rainbow in the covenant, and also where the organs came from. But we're going to get even into some deeper stuff here in just a quick moment about transmuting that energy, so that way when the resonation starts happening and they seem to phase into you, they only phase into the higher level of themselves, and thus the energy is transmuted. Any mind that can see yours, you can see its. Anything that's primordial contains a vast amount of knowledge that can be used in applications for this reality to truly bring about the reality that you're actually looking for and that you're working to achieve. But with great works like this, meaning what we have to actually do in this reality right now to kickstart it into the direction of really balancing itself, is going to take that kind of power balanced out, right? So last paragraph here. Person says, I also feel one more question. It was about working. How do I get to the point where I don't have to work anymore? I don't want to work for corporate America. I don't want to be ruled by money anymore. I want to live free and help ascend the planet into the 5th dimension. They always tempt me to work for companies, and I don't want to work anymore because I know the truth about working. We are simply working for the Dark Kabbalah. Nonetheless, hope you all can help me out, and most certainly we can. There's always a means to an end. Everything that we're doing is to accomplish a certain goal. When we start realizing that as people, that it doesn't happen all at once, we realize that sometimes we can short circuit certain things that still need to be in place in order to get us to the next level. I was thinking today, probably the most influential people in getting you to the next level are actually the ones holding you back. Because once you overcome that, then you master the ability to be able to overcome things. So no matter what, if you can't make tough decisions, there's always going to be a wall that you reach. So when you learn how to overcome some of the greatest people holding you back, then you've developed a technique of being able to leap the wall. Same thing, if that's an archon, if that's a reptile, you may find it's anything. You just have to learn that ability, and you have to put that into practice. We're going to talk about that here a little bit more in a moment. Also, let me see here. I think there was still one part of this that, the money thing. Yeah, very tricky. So what happens is that in this reality, as you see, it's got an as below version of alchemy known as money. What I find most intricate about money is it really wholly depends upon, for a person that's already working with spirituality on a positive level, it really takes some creative ingenuity in order to actually get yourself financially stable. And this is because the reality is thus far been offering 98, if not 99% of his jobs to those who are not dealing with balancing themselves and increasing. So we've launched some efforts to fix that, because if I say, if I come up against a problem like this and I don't have any solutions, or I can't find any solutions, then I know that's a place for me to be a solution. And So what I'm saying is, excuse me, I see the video may have stopped here. Let me get something else going on. There we go. We can go back to here. All right. Make sure that's not on. Okay, excuse me, everyone. One moment, please. Let me just rewind this a little bit more. So there we go. Okay, so the money thing. So okay, let's keep it straight. Let's look alive here. Okay, so there's only a few ways into this. I mean, it's just there's not too many options. The first way is that, and this is what I'm going to start teaching here, is now you have to get innovative. What you're trying to accomplish, you're still going to need some capital for, but you need that capital in a short period of time so that way you can spend more of your time working on whatever it is that you need to achieve. Every person, even before the whole money started, had something that they did for the tribe. So you have to think about, what are you doing for the tribe? Is it a resource or is it a service? The difference is a doctor sells a service. Someone who has magnesium is selling a resource. Somebody who has gold is selling a resource. So if you're into services, like you want to heal people, you want to, work with people, I would encourage you to begin to get some stuff under your belt, like health. Get your nutrition down pat. And this doesn't mean you got to go to a school. Just realize or learn the knowledge of how to cleanse all the organs, the skin, the blood, and then get that under your belt. And then what happens is that, we're about to open up some things, and there's a lot of places out there also, but you can come in the capacity of lending your gifts. You also have your YouTube channel, your Instagram channel. We're going to talk a lot about social media, how it really works in the conscious networks, all those kind of things in these upcoming weeks, upcoming months, maybe upcoming year. And so then it'll click for you of how you're going to integrate what you're doing into your living. And then what happens is that as you keep connecting with more and people start to enlarge your circle, if you may, then you can start to launch some of those collaborative ideas of you actually getting into a space where the financial issue is not a factor. So it's a step-by-step process. I feel like personally that I play also a major role in that step and process for people about conscious applications in the physical reality. Again, we have current and currency semester 2 about conscious applications in the physical reality. And these are some of the keys to it. So you have 3D printing, you have milling, you have other aspects of things. And again, that may not be what you get into. So you just have to find your way. Look on Etsy. So what happens is that this is more what we're going to talk about, of how to get out of this money matrix, how to get your liver clean, certain organs that specifically relate to your money situation, so that way you can flow and be abundant. So let me just take one moment here, get a drink of water. Okay, here we go. We're going to keep moving through this. Next question is like, wait a minute. There's one question that took 40 minutes. All right, so let me see here. All right, maybe I should have told everyone not to put Livestream on their questions. So I will tell everyone that if you put Livestream question on your question, do me a huge favor, go back in and change your topic title to the question, or at least, paraphrase part of the question. Because what that does is it allows others to see the question and see if they can jump in and lend some advice or give you some materials on that question. So like I said, if you put a question in there, I'm counting on you to go in and change that title to the main aspect of your question, or else I'm going to delete it. Because then, we got to go back and we got to clean all this stuff up. So if you could do that for me. Also, it lets me see the question right away, and I can start moving through these things because I'm about to kick it into high gear. We got 20 minutes, and let's see what Sevan can do in 20 minutes. One more question. No, okay, hold on, here it is. Okay, so that's page 2. 1 second, we got 2 pages of questions. So yeah, just make sure you go back in and change your questions, spend the time, because I'm going to be handling these questions throughout the week. I'm going to jump in early in the morning for like 15 minutes on some of this. That's why I hooked all this up like this today, so I can just jump in. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to just I'm only answering questions actually right now. I'm only going to answer questions that I can see the question in the actual subject line. And that's going to make you have to make the question short and to the point. I see one question that says lust. And I really, really want to deal with that because that's something that's very, very important. Because it can often get twisted in the reality of the difference between tantra and lust. And if you happen to get twisted in the game, homie or homegirl, then it could be pretty treacherous on the dimension, and you could find yourself here for like ever. What happens is that now, first of all, remember, I'm not talking at you, I'm talking to you. And whatever you're doing right now is great because you have that experience. However, when you're looking to move on, when you keep saying, I need to go to the next level, just think about that. When you say, I need to go to the next level, what you have to think of is what chakra are you primarily in? And what does going to the next level look like? And the most interesting thing that I find about that is that a lot of people that work with consciousness will claim they're either in their heart chakra or they'll claim that they're actually in their crown chakra. But in reality, because we live in a physical world and there's a lot of flesh and meat and carne going on, as a carne, which is meat or flesh, booties, all of this going on, then, and also reproduction, because see, this is a hard-coded part of our consciousness. So this is not something to try to avoid. This is not something that, you need to be blushing about. But the truth is that you start to realize in your adepthood, and you're going to need to realize this for yourself because there's no amount of whatever any person can tell you, because each of the chakras, if you start looking at the ancient diagrams, what they show you is they show you like this entity, demon, if you may. The largest one that they show is like the opposite in a sense to your enlightened body. It's like your weight, if you may. And they generally show that as, some huge monster with fangs and a big mouth. And then inside the stomach, they show like all of these other worlds and things going on. And what they're actually expressing and saying is that this monster is not able to be satiated. Meaning, no matter how many cars you get, like if you see Chris Brown out there with, I saw so many cars and four-wheelers. I was like, you never get satiated. You never can satiate this monster, this beast from the lower part of the body. So no matter what you feed it, it will keep consuming. And many have found themselves on that vicious cycle. Like in fact, such a large part of the men and the women in the world are sitting in the root chakra right below the navel. This is what's allowing those that are actually more closer to where the navel is to master over those demons. Because what happens is that when you can't transmute the lower energies because you're constantly feeding on and eating lower energies by habit. Like look what the word is saying, lower energy, lower inner chi. The inner chi, the inner energy. How are you fueling your inner energy? So, of course, men become fueled at times, more often than not, by very attractive women, right? And they are fueled at times, people in society generally are fueled by food, even the appearance of food. Like I rode down the freeway the other day, and all I could see is flesh, meaning skin, abs, booty, titties, and hamburgers. And this is showing you again how when that chakra itself is overstimulated, because it's never satiated, it actually turns into a lust. A lust is almost like a salivating version of needing more of the flesh. Now remember, all this is hard-coded into the body because the original command, from that archonic side of ourself is be fruitful and multiply, right? And that's how Gaia stays in her dream. That's how we make sure that their future is actually there. That's how we keep the whole wheel turning, right? So we get its purpose. That's why I'm saying it's not good to demonize any of this stuff to make it bigger than who you are. So we recognize its purpose, but now we must as adepts as many have done, or actually I want to say many, some have done, sometimes in improper ways, but you must realize how to transmute that energy. What is the higher correspondence of sexual energy? And I want to tell you, I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'm not just going to give you the speech that I got. Like, hey, you just need to transmute the energy, you'll be better, okay? Why am I doing that again? Because I can only see right away benefits from the other one. So what it is that, see, the bottom half of the body, which we call the bottom cone, is actually very dualistic. That's why you have two legs. You know, one walks in front of the other in order to be ahead. So because of that, what occurs is that in this lower half of the body, everything is separate. So one leg can be seen as female, the other leg can be seen as male. And because of that, that's what physicality is. Physicality is dualism. Physicality is opposites. So when you think about, well, how many people can I get with on the physical reality? I want 2 boyfriends. I want 2 girlfriends. I want 3 girlfriends. When you start thinking about the reality of what that would even be like, you can start realizing even if you couldn't handle that one person, how are you going to be able to deal with those 2 people in physical reality, right? It's chaos. However, if you start to think about, but on the higher levels, there is no separation. So if you move into the higher energies, and this doesn't mean you move into the higher concept physically, which some people say, on the higher concept, if we all together, that's why I got 5 girlfriends. Wrong. You put it right back into the physical field again. You need to get to a point to where you're not sending off that frequency of lust and desire, oh, I want to be with you, but you are still active in your centers, because, you know, the other thing is celibacy and monkism, and we've seen that hasn't been very productive either. What it's about is it's about transmuting the energy to realize, especially on journeys, that you have a connection with the opposite sex from a level of polarities that allow a higher level of energetics to be achieved. And when you're thinking about that, and you know that you must erase the lust kind of thing from your consciousness, now you're on the right path. In addition to that, another thing that may assist you in all this, have you ever wondered why those men who have that kind of aspect and lust aspect to them, and women also, seem to kind of run away someone that is actually they're trying to get with? And then they're like, well, I didn't even come across like that. I didn't even say anything. And it's the person, people are naturally avoiding that person. And it's because when they're in that chakra center, that's actually the field that's in front of them. So it's in a slight part of the vibration of your voice. It's coming off of your body. And because of that, what you'll find is you'll primarily run into people that are associated with that same aspect of the chakra. So then when you're trying to get to another level, you won't actually have the people around you that correspond to the next level and thus able to get you to the next level, because they will be repulsed by that actual thought or that actual frequency, which you would think that they're not even able to pick up. And the deeper level of this is because when we, pull back the realm and we see what's really there, you always see at least one being standing behind a person. And generally this could be seen as their oversoul, and this being seems to be rather advanced as far as it knowing about more things than the person. It's, again, some kind of connection that they have to it. So when you're walking up to a person, instead of imagining that you're just seeing that person in physicality, start realizing that there's another much more advanced being standing behind them that can read all of that you got going on that you think that you're hiding from the person. And what this being does is it then in turn guides the person's reflections and actions to how they perceive you. That is exactly the process. Until the person actually merges with their oversoul, they always have that energy there actually scanning everything. And again, this is not about the oversoul's always going to look out for me, the oversoul's always going to do the best thing for me. That's not what we're talking about. This is way more dynamic than that. We're just saying that, remember that there's always something around the person that can see you from even a level at times that you haven't been able to see yet unless you've been on your journey. So that's another major reason why you want to turn that frequency off if you're looking to get to the next level, and just simply transmute it. Don't turn it off, transmute it into realizing that you can be around thousands of men, thousands of women, and get to a level that is so much more higher than you could ever achieve in one of these relationships, these short-term relationships that people have entered today, if you're willing to do that. So that's the trade-off. It may take you to your life 40 to figure out that that's the best thing to do. Hey, and that's okay. At least you have the information. And again, knowing is half the battle. The last question that I'm going to actually answer here, because I see that the good thing to do now, which is a big part of this, me getting in every, I don't know, I can't say every day, at least every other day, and saying at least something, is I can always jump here and answer a question. Like, I feel like that if I'm just going in on one of these shows, it could get, pretty far out there. But the reality is that if I'm answering one of these questions, I generally get to what I intend to come to at some point anyway, so it helps. Let's see if I can find something that is titled properly. Okay, let's talk about dependent relationships. Since we agreed that we would talk a bit about relationships, this question says, do you have any suggestions on ways to keep others from being too hooked on what you can offer as balance and balancing? Let me see, let me finish reading this. I just have to click on it. First of all, I can answer that question just from the way it is. I don't even need to click into it. Okay, so let's think about what actually happens here in a relationship. Generally, when two people come together, they're in super impression mode or super impress mode, right? Even their Facebook pictures don't look like who they are most of the time, but the truth is that there's this whole thing that people go into, which is like the dance or the mating dance, when they first meet each other, and that's all a natural part of life. That's to form the attraction. But when someone does that so exceptionally well, then they could at times cause an immediate imbalance within the relationship, and thus this other person kind of gets hooked, and this starts to kind of run you away. But the issue is that what they say is that you should not do anything that you can't do all the time. So this means that generally in these kind of scenarios, it's your fault right away, because that's we used to say back in the day, you kind of came on too strong. And more importantly, you come on in the way that you aren't really. And this gets the person fascinated by something that you can't actually consistently do. So one of the major parts of this, and we're just going to address that as it is in itself. We're not going to get deep into relationships since we don't have the time right now. But one of the main parts is to start thinking about ourselves. Like, think about if you're ending relationships the same way over and over again, is it really you? Think about that. Is it them or is it you? If this is occurring over and over again, and what you'll find, the answer to that question is it'll be something that you're doing. So the more that you work to be true, the more people you're meeting that are true. If you happen to be in a relationship where now this person's hooked to you and you don't want that kind of connection with them, there's something that you did when initially engaging in that relationship, or something even about you right now that is not completely transparent. That's okay. That's how most of us begin. We work with this mask because there's a lot of things that have gone on. There's things that we don't want to really be open with people about. And all of us have that demand to be the best that we can be just in this social structure of society. There's an extreme challenge. I mean, think about the guy these days that doesn't have a car, and if it's not maybe a Bugatti. I mean, think about, when you go to the club probably these days. I haven't been in a while, but I'm sure the only ones getting action are those in VIP. Like, anyone who's not in VIP is not even really thought about. So what I'm saying is that the world is constantly pushing people to wear the mask. And in many cases, no matter how true that we think we've become, we may find ourselves doing that too. So be aware of that. Be aware of when you say a person's hooked, that you've thrown out some kind of net on top of them that may not be completely who you are. So the next question here, and we got about 5 more minutes. Loving the questions, loving the connection. And it's definitely something that I'm looking forward to continuously doing. Like I say, even if it's 30 minutes, I may get in the morning because I'm a lot more clearer. Let me see, if the dinosaur humans living together in real theory. Yeah, more than we think. I'm not going to address that question right now. I'll probably do that maybe tomorrow morning. Let's see what page number 1 says. Okay, this question came out twice, so I'm going to answer it. Metatron's cube, false or reality? Let me give you the depth knowledge on what that is really about as fast as possible, because I do actually end up needing to explain the Saturn myth, which is too big for me to do right now, but I can explain to you Metatron's cube. Okay, so what happens is that when you're talking about organic realities, right, the ones that come from the womb, we can't actually get to those. And the reason is because we're already there. It's impossible to get to something that you're already at, okay? So what happens is that there is another field. And that field is when you can say a person's a time traveler or they're a time lord, that's because they can pick up the signature of that field. So let me just explain to you how that happens. In the physical world, you'll see really at first only things that are of nature. Then as things go on, and this is what's called squaring the circle, you'll actually find buildings, you'll find structures, you'll find frequencies, you'll find antennas, you'll find all these different things that emit a very different type of geometry, a straight line kind of geometry. And that's why, you know, when you blow open the third eye and you're downtown, you know, don't do that unless you're ready to do your thing, unless you're ready. You'll see a lot of straight line geometry within the field. And this is because for a Time Lord, it's very easy to pick up on straight line geometry. It's like coordinates. So what happens is that in the organic realities, you can't really actually phase lock into them because they're already inside of you. So the reason why, this is a very difficult concept to explain, but in conclusion, the reason why Metatron's cube was utilized, which actually works into a deep level of the geometry that you're witnessing in the Cometan pyramid. Metatron is more or less, it's a Kabbalistic term used for when one has created one of those bodies. So I see why the person's asking, is it artificial? Because everything is real, there's really nothing that's artificial. You're really more of asking, what is its applications? And its actual applications is that it can become a geometric field around a person, remembering Dune in this respect, that can fold matrix-based space and time in order to get that person into other parts of the reality, or allow that person to construct those kind of geometric structures in the reality, which generally are based on things that are developed in matrices, such as businesses, buildings, you know, those things that you'll find that are crafted by the hand of man and woman. Meaning that, you know, not on an organic level, something that we built and created. So Metatron's cube also is a massive reference or repository for technological information within the cube. And the reason is because all the knowledge is stored in that pattern. And the reason why it's stored in that pattern is because that kind of knowledge is easier to be accessed. And the easiest way to put this is let's say, for instance, you're storing your memories, right, in your mind. And right now you're storing your memories as experiences that are then being turned into a fluid. So what happens though if you start storing those memories as a geometric shape? What happens is it becomes somewhat the same geometric shape. It becomes very easy for you to access. Like if I say, what did you do 3 weeks ago on Friday at 5 o'clock? Because all your geometry is let's say a cube-based perfect geometry, it's easier for you to access that point in time. That's why they call it the cube, and it's related to time. versus if it's stored in clumps and, you know, kind of how most people's memories are, it's very difficult to access that space and time. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more insight. Obviously, if you'd have caught me 3 or 4 years ago, I would tell you it was works of the dark side. But truthfully, the aspects of what it is another application that's being used in the matrix for better or for worse. And that's all I have to say about that. So it's 9:01. Let me get the camera going here for a quick second so I can say wholeness to everyone. This is just a warm-up. This is like a pre-show. I'm looking definitely forward to getting into this and getting used to it again. You know, I just get off the camera for some time. But also, again, more than anything, coming into it with a whole different perspective. I think personally that the transformation that I've made within the last 2 weeks is at the strength and the magnitude of this transition that I made. One second. At the strength and the magnitude of the transition that I made when I first came into this, it's just because my energy is so grounded and balanced and harmonic now, it's not coming off like, and the words are backwards, and you gotta, it's not coming off like that. I can actually be rather calm and still be completely aware at the stage that I'm in now. And more importantly, that awareness has me knowing where you need me the most. And that's where I'm going to be. And that's why I said today in the email, you know, I know what you're going through. Let's share this time. Let's share this space. There's a lot that is a bit behind, meaning that we see there's a lot of questions. At this point, these kind of questions should be answered, meaning that in some of the work. So there's obviously the Innerversity that you can always take part in. There's a good discount going on in the Innerversity right now if you wanted to check it out. And then other than that, I'm going to be getting through these questions. I may answer some of these texts because I kind of like to do that sometimes too. But the main thing is that they're here. So you got, you know, guys like Toombs, who I've definitely seen some of his videos, and he's doing his thing. I know Peter is still kicking, and you have, of course, Murad and Ein or Helder, and then myself, and this is what it is. So also what we're going to be doing is when we're answering these questions, we're going to just create videos, and then we're just going to put the video inside the question, and there you have it. And like I said, you know, we want to receive, but let's definitely think about giving. So if you can answer any of these questions, definitely get in there and take care of it. Wanted to say wholeness and balanced vibrations to everyone. Just going to make sure that the transmission went through and everything is everything. I will be seeing you soon. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Much love, compassion, honor, respect. Anything that you could think of that means positivity and harmony is coming from me right to you. Thank you.